percentage rate, which should ensure full disclosure of all costs incurred in repaying a loan. Now, an independent survey conducted by the Interest Rates Advisory Center has indeed shown that a majority of cases it has handled so far, interest rates charged on banks by loans, on loans, mortgages and overdrafts is wrongly calculated, which means most people could be paying a lot more than they should when repaying their loans. Let's illuminate what ought to go into a loan repayment with Wilfred Onono, a managing consultant at the Interest Rate Advisory Center. Thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps first things first, how does an annual rate percentage work, and how is it different from how we see loans calculated today?
This is a new system that is being introduced right now. So maybe I should talk about what was happening previously, yes, then explain what I think the banks want to do.
Yes.
In the past and presently, if you went to a bank to ask for a loan, you will be told first to pay some appraisal fees, one-off, and then they will tell you about an interest rate. Each individual borrower will most likely have a different rate because the rate is normally based on what banks call their base lending rates.
Yes.
Then they will add a margin for each particular borrower, depending on your risk assessment, on your credit status, and then so for each particular borrower there will be a different rate. Each bank has its own, at then one time, its own base lending rates. But for each particular borrower, depending on their credit rating, their margin will be different.
So will it change with the new system?
I still imagine that there will be margins for each particular borrower because the risk assessment or the credit rating of each individual borrower will be different still. But what I envisage or I think will happen is that there are so many other charges that go with interest. For example, I've talked about the appraisal fees. Annually, they will be debiting a commitment fees based on a percentage of what is outstanding on your loan.
Yes.
They will be charging ledger fees and other bank charges that you see in your statement. They even charge when you default on your loan and they must start recovery process. They will charge the legal fees that is paid to their lawyers to recover.
Yes.
They will charge valuation fees on the security. So there are so many other charges. So what I think the annual percentage rate envisages to do is that it will put together all these charges and come up with one single rate as a percentage.
So before we get to that point, what are some of the costs or the hidden costs, so to speak, that we should be looking out for when we are applying for a loan?
I've talked about those charges, but more importantly, what will happen when you default? Most banks will introduce a penalty rate. Most banks in this country will introduce a penalty rate so that if you have defaulted, the bank will say, this man is not going to pay, or it's going to be difficult to recover from him, so we will up his rate, maybe by another 10%.
As we wind up, we've got a question from Weekly for Butu, who asks, why is the interest rate on deposits not commensurate with interest rates on loans?
There is a question of supply and demand. You literally leave your money with the bank and they decide what rate to pay on your deposit. I know some people who negotiate, especially if you have some substantial amount of money, they get good rates. So you should really be talking to your bank if you have some substantial amount of money and ask for a good rate. The banks will normally add this thing they call a spread. So if, for example, they have taken your money at 3%, they will be lending it to you and me at maybe 15%.
And of course, these are questions we will address with the CEO of Equity Bank, who's sitting with us here. Perhaps he'll be able to highlight that for us and tell us exactly why that happens. Mr. Onono, thank you so much for shedding a light on this very close issue to the hearts of Kenyans, because we are, every day knocking on the doors of banks just to get one loan or the other. We will be right back with more after the break. Don't go too far.